I know Rome wasn't built in a day, but in Anno 117 it might take you several hundred. And after 20 hours of building, trading, praying to the gods and desperately trying not to set my city on fire, here is how Anno 117 Pax Romana really plays. My name is Tom from LT Gaming, and today we're heading back 2000 years to a time when your city's biggest problem wasn't pollution or traffic, it was angry Celts and a very demanding emperor. This video has kindly been sponsored by Ubisoft, who gave us early access to Anno 117 Pax Romana so we could get properly stuck in. So 20 hours of city building, toga management and one very dramatic pig shortage later, I've got some thoughts to share with you. So if you've ever lost entire weekends to Anno 1800, or you're wondering whether Rome can still rule the city building world in 2025, give this video a like, get us out there on the algorithm, and of course tell me in the comments your thoughts. And if you feel like it, feel free to subscribe to the channel. The logical place to start is setting the stage. Anno 117 is at the absolute height of the Roman Empire, so a world of marble, politics and all the backstabbing you would like. You play as a freshly appointed governor, chosen by the emperor himself to manage the provinces, starting in the sun-soaked Latium before expanding into the misty, rain-soaked wilds of Albion. It's a proper Roman field trip, from olive groves to bogs, villas to villages, and a fair few people along the way who want you dead. It's a fantastic change of pace from Anno 1800 industrial grime. Gone are the smog and soot, replaced by aqueducts, temples, and a worrying number of gods who all want your love and attention. And while it's new in look and tone, the classic Anno heart is still here, the almost hypnotic loop of expansion, logistics and economy management that will have you saying just one more warehouse until it's 2 AM. So right off the bat, there's one thing Anno 117 absolutely nails, and it's atmosphere. You don't just build your cities, you live in them. From the moment you're appointed as governor, you're surrounded by marble ambition, divine politics and citizens who always seem one tax rise away from rioting. The campaign's got more narrative than usual too, full of imperial requests, voice scenes and characters who love a bit of melodrama. The Emperor in particular might be one of the most insufferably smug leaders I've ever worked for, and that's including my brother Luke here, and I was actually pretty happy when the villain showed up, because honestly mate, I was with him 100%. It was a very decent effort at giving the Anno formula a story arc, though sometimes it did step on the pacing and there were moments I just wanted to get back to balancing my linen supply chain and not sit for another scene about court gossip and egos the size of the Colosseum. But when the story fades into the background and you're left to rule, the Roman world really sings. You go from the warm marble plazas of Latium to the fog-choked swamps of Albion, where every building looks slightly offended by the weather. I was also a little shocked by the accents of the people from Albion. They sounded like they were from the West Country a bit, like me. And not the Scottish lilt I was expecting, but that's a small personal thing. Regardless of that, the game is rich, immersive and full of personality, a proper sense of empire at your fingertips. And yes, the melodrama occasionally overreaches, but the setting itself is absolutely brilliant. The sense of scale, the architecture, the sound design, it all makes the empire feel alive. I think it'd be good to focus on what is actually new in Anno 117 as well. So the game's big two additions are culture and religion. They don't just decorate your empire, they define it. You can keep conquered provinces proudly Celtic or start Romanizing them, swapping those thatched huts for tiled roofs and unlocking the ability to drain marshes, build Roman infrastructure and generally make everything look like it's been blessed by an architect with OCD. It's genuinely clever, and you can play it both ways, and even flip-flop later if you regret your decisions, as I often did. Stick with the locals and you get charmingly grim bogs and druids. Go full Roman and you get clean roads, aqueducts and an overwhelming sense of self-importance. Then coming on to the religion side of it, every province can pick a patron god and their devotion gives gameplay bonuses. Ceres will bless your farms, Neptune your fleets, and the Celtic gods offer their own quirks too. It's flavorful and thematic, but I do think the game stumbles slightly here. All of these systems are genuinely fresh and they hit you quite early on, layered over the main campaign and some story bits. And I really love the ambition, but I wish there was a standalone tutorial map of some kind where I could just learn it all. No imperial drama, no cutscenes, just me, some mud and a fishery. As it stands, you're juggling cultural policies, supply chains, divine devotion, while the emperor is sending you letters about silk curtains. It get a little bit much in the opening hours, but once it clicks, it is fantastic. So yes, the religion system is adding some meaningful depth, and culture choices give each region their own identity and feel. so it's proper Anno world building. Now where the game really finds its rhythm is the beautiful brain-melding city building loop that the series does so well. You start small, a handful of huts, a fishing shack, maybe a workshop or two, but before long you've got a block full of plebs, a few sandal factories, and maybe a bakery that's making everyone very happy until of course it catches fire. So it's classic Anno, build, balance, expand and then panic, but with a few new twists along the way. This time, almost every building affects the area around it. I found out the hard way that a bakery will increase property values nearby, but also raises big fire risk. Pig farms make people miserable, but you can't live without them. So city planning turns into this beautiful balancing act of aesthetics, efficiency and damage control. One thing that really spoke to me is the organic feel. Compared to Anno 1800's rigid zoning, your best cities can now end up looking messy but in the right way. So little mixed-use clusters that feel very distinctly Roman rather than these big industrial grids. So it's the first time I've looked at Anno City and thought, yeah, that's a real thing. Each citizen tier still brings new demands, so some want bread, others want sandals, and some want bloody everything. But where it gets interesting is fulfilling these needs and how they tie now into other systems like knowledge and belief. You build a library and you're not just making the scholars happy, you're generating research. So it all ends up interlocking quite beautifully, and you can feel the synergy that the devs are pushing for between these different aspects. That being said, the game can be overwhelming early on, so I often found myself digging through sub-menus to check my workforce balance for example, and it broke me out of my city building flow. But once it all clicks, it is very hypnotic. The moment you've balanced the bread chain, smoothed out the supply routes, and your tax income actually starts to sing, that's pure Anno magic right there. So when you kick off the game, you build your perfect Roman postcard in Latium. The game then turns everything on its head and sends you to the Celtic frontier of Albion. Albion's terrain is a logistical nightmare, and in the best way possible. Marshes eat up your building space, they cost a lot of materials to make the bridges that go over them, and each expansion feels like a small engineering miracle. And you can choose to Romanize the locals or let them proudly display their Celtic ways. But the kicker here is that both provinces rely on each other. Your Romans want Celtic goods and your Celts want Roman luxuries, and before long you've got fleets crisscrossing the Mediterranean carrying wool, wine and the occasional very lost sheep, and it's a very clever design that keeps the game moving in its late stages. However, it is not all smooth sailing. I did find managing multiple regions a challenge and it got fiddly at times. Very impressive in scope, but it did stretch my attention thin. So yes, the multi-region setup is ambitious and it's very impressive when it works, but it also demands your focus and some patience along the way. Now on paper this should have been the most dramatic part of Anno 117, and that is the combat. Roman legions clashing with barbarians, tremes firing flaming arrows across the sea, but the reality is a little less dramatic. Naval battles are serviceable. You build your ships, assign weapons and send them off to do glorious Roman things, but you're mostly an observer. There's not much tactical control beyond that one, attack that one, and then you pray to Neptune or something. Land combat exists too. You train 6 types of units to defend your territory. But in my 20 hours it felt more like a side dish than a core feature. But Anno has always been about logistics, not legions, and that is still the case here. Just don't come in expecting Total War Rome 3. This is a city builder first. So it is light touch, but it does add personality to what could have been a colder economic sandbox, and add in the storylines to boot, and it does tie together very nicely. One thing I absolutely loved and adored with the game is the presentation. So the artistry on display here is fantastic. The way the sunlight might dance across some tiled roofs or to the mist rolling through Celtic hills, it all looks absolutely gorgeous. So your cities feel alive. You see buildings adapting to slopes with little wooden supports, roads twisting naturally over rivers, and there's just enough grit to make the world believable. It's not all postcard perfection, it's like a living, breathing Rome. My one gripe here is the interface. It's a bit clunky in places, clearly designed with controllers in mind, but as I'm a member of the PC Master Race, I don't really relate to that. But honestly, when the game looks this good, it's hard to stay too annoyed. Anno 117 is gorgeous, immersive, and full of those small quiet moments that remind you of why I love this genre. Standing back after a few hours of chaos and then watching my city glow under the moon and thinking, yes, I built that. So after about 20 hours in Anno 117, it's clear to me that it's not just Anno 1800 with a toga. It's smarter, denser, and it adds fresh layers without losing the core charm that the series possesses. Beautiful, hypnotic loops of building, balancing, and watching your world breathe. The Roman theme is superb. Architecture, music, sense of scale, it's all deeply atmospheric. Culture and religion systems add proper flavour, and when you're in that flow of supply chains, trade routes, it's as satisfying as Anno has ever been. That being said, it's not perfect of course. The campaign story stumbles a bit for me at times. The UI will fight you more than the barbarians ever will, and I would love a proper standalone tutorial map just to learn all the mechanics and different things. But when it all finally clicks, your fleets are moving, your temples are humming in prayer, and the Emperor isn't yelling at you, Anno 117 feels magnificent. It's ambitious and utterly absorbing, and the kind of game you're going to load up for an hour and then end up playing until 3 AM. Alright, I've been Tom from LT Gaming. Thanks everyone for watching, and thanks again to Ubisoft for sponsoring this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye now.